kids. Also, I needed to make you aware that on Monday night we had a board meeting, had a wonderful board meeting. And in that meeting, it was unanimously decided that we present to you today Mr. Adam Barker as a new member of our pastoral staff. He is now Pastor Adam, our youth pastor. And this is kind of totally backwards to every youth pastor I've ever had. I've always gone looking for one and choosing one, and then they become the youth pastor. Adam has been the youth pastor for a long time. We're just recognizing it. God has ordained him. God has used him. He has been a blessing to this body. And we just felt like it was time that he had his proper recognition in our body. So Adam, God bless you. And I thank the Lord for what he's doing in our lives. Remember, the little yellow sheet is there for information for our update. On your prayer request list, I need you to add a couple of folks, please. Of course, the Arnold family. Just kind of circle that in the list. Ralph Branson needs your prayers today, so if you would please add him to the list or circle his name down there right before mine. And bring these people to the Lord in your personal prayers today. I would appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Margaret's husband's, she's a Catholic.
She's Anthony's stepsister.
Okay, stepsister, okay.
All covered in a bad accident.
Okay.
She's in the hospital actually.
Okay.
And broke her collarbone.
Mhm.
One is a gear.
And if you could just remember her.
What's her first name?
Teresa.
Teresa. Would you please remember Teresa? This is a family member of Jim and Amber's daughter, and she was in a terrible truck accident yesterday. And is
Thursday, Friday.
Thursday or Friday? Okay. So please remember them. I appreciate it. Also add Dave to your prayers. Dave Vaught. He's had another procedure this week, and they decided to be very unkind. So he's having a few days of tremendous discomfort. So pray for Dave that the Lord will restore him for sure. I told Todd in the midst of the week that this kind of week is not what they put in the brochure to recruit pastors. It was full of wonderful and hard things to do. As you all know, on Tuesday, our dear Jenny just paraded into the presence of Jesus. And we have done our best to remember him. And then in that, I say for Mick, Wilma, for Daphne, for Deb and Eddie, for Mickey, for all of that family, thank you for so much love and kindness that you showed this week. It was very, very precious. And I thank you. You were faithful. And I thank you very much. And on that same morning, my buddy, my dear friend Tommy Johnson, ran into the presence of the Lord. And the services for Tommy are going to be a few weeks. He had told me before that he didn't want to be in a hurry. He had chosen to be cremated, and that he wanted us to take time before we had his service. And he gave me explicit orders. I've got a file folder that he's been working on for 10 years of what I've got to accomplish in that service. And he said, I don't want any bawling and squalling. I said, I want celebration of the presence of Jesus. I want a worship service. And for those who didn't know Tommy, Tommy was a tremendous musician. Had his degree in music, was a band director for several years, was a private trumpet teacher all over this area. And so needless to say, his service is going to have some fine music. And it's very possible that it will even include him was in was Veterans Day. And if you remember, he closed the service with taps. And taps may not mean a lot to you, but since high school, Tommy has been playing taps for military funerals. He's done over 200 military funerals in these years.
Or was he a veteran? Do you know?
No, he was not. No, sir, he was not. Tommy took me on a path that no one has ever taken me before. Back in really probably September or October, he started, well, even before that, remember he was put on a transplant list. And we went to Knoxville and he met with the doctors. And they kind of told him of the path of things. And in between that and some reports, he had some problems with a port where they were doing the dialysis. And he had, at that point, just about decided to just stop all the dialysis. But Alice and her team talked him out of that. And he continued until the call from Knoxville that said he was not a viable candidate for transplant. That his health was just not sufficient to do that kind of gamble. And so at that point, which was in November, Tommy made the decision to stop dialysis. And he knew exactly what that meant. They basically gave him a calendar of not only what dates he would have, but what would happen in the progress of those dates. And it pretty well kept to the calendar. And he walked me through a 2-month path of how to die. And it was quite a trek. You say, well, are you going somewhere? Yes, I have a sermon. And it deals with both Tommy and Jimmy of what they left. Now, Tommy had a lot of special things that were very meaningful to him. He was, up until he was had such sickness back about 8 years ago, Tommy was a very successful businessman. And had a lot of the things that go with success. And he decided he was going to choose to give those things of treasure to the people that mattered to him while he was still alive. And he basically had a parade going through his apartment over the last 45 days of former students that had meant so much to him. If I'm not mistaken, kids, the principal of Central was one of his band students, and he gave him private lessons. I think it was Central. And he meant so much to him. And he wanted him to have a special lamp that was made of a trumpet. And so he had him in to spend time with him, and different things like that, including my necktie, was a part of that. But the thing that he talked about the most was that he wanted to leave to his girls and to those that he had taught through the years a heritage of faith. We talked a little bit Friday night about the heritage that Jimmy has left in the lives. These are, now, I wasn't sure I even knew the difference, Phil, between heritage and inheritance. There is a great difference. Inheritance basically is stuff. It's the necktie. It's the viable properties that we pass down from one generation to another. And by the way, that is biblical. It is very biblical. But heritage is living. It's the life. It's the motivation of choices. It's the character. It's the passion that one lives by. And passing that down is a much more powerful thing than simply passing down stuff. Stuff, as good as it is, comes and goes. But a heritage will last not only a generation. I talked Friday night about the fact that Jimmy had touched and loved 4 generations of Peaks. He and my daddy were buddies. He was one of my dearest friends. He and Chris were Pepsi buddies. Because Chris's first job with Pepsi was at the Walmart where Jimmy was the greeter. And every day they got to spend time together and they became buddies. The last time that my grandbaby was here was possibly the last service that Jimmy was with us. And at the close of the service, we looked back and Jimmy's sitting back there in his spot and he's just petting on Vedder. Just rubbing his back and rubbing his arm, just loving on him. 4 generations of really a heritage of love. I hope that you and I are paying more attention to heritage than inheritance. I hope that those that we love that are planting themselves in our life, that we're drawing from them heritage. And you say, well, I don't have anyone that has that available. Find someone. Church is a good place to find that, by the way. I can tell you of men, that some of them you have known, that gave me heritage because of the faithfulness of their lives and the way they lived them. The Scripture tells us in Isaiah 54:17, the Scripture starts off, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is from me. The heritage mentions there is victory in battle. It's a victorious spirit and defense when under attack, because we have an advocate. If you can tell your kids or your grandkids anything, tell them they have someone who's on their side. That no matter what happens or when, he will be faithful to be there for them and to be their advocate. And that it is his righteousness that lives in us. It is his heritage of right. There is no good in any of us. But in him we stand today righteous because it's our heritage of faith, because of what the Lord has lived in and through us. Isaiah 58:14. Then you shall delight yourself in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride on high